ADR. Promoting dialogue.
It's midday in Dakar, 1 o'clock in Lagos. Good afternoon and many thanks for staying tuned to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and around the world on wadr.org. This is Newslink and here are the top stories. Côte d'Ivoire's Independent Electoral Commission seals the candidacy registration phase ahead of October 25 presidential election. The Gambian police releases 22 protesters as the government investigates recent high in data subscription.
We will be jailed, we will be locked up, but we will be released, but Gambia will be free. We are all going to get into the various cars that are here to go home. We understand that unless our wish, we are going to walk back to Westfield. But sometimes we must re-strategize, we must re-energize, and we must come back again.
Guinea-Bissau's Prime Minister Brahima Kamara seeks medical treatment in Dakar shortly after his swearing in into office. And the African Chief of Defense Staff Summit ends today in Abuja, Nigeria.
The organization is in the process of activating a 260,000 rapid deployment counter-terrorism brigade and to provide logistic and financial support to frontline states facing terrorism.
Details of these stories and more coming up shortly. Please stay with us.
Christopher Aticho with Newslink.
Many thanks for joining our broadcast and a warm welcome to our listeners within and beyond the sub-region. Newslink begins in Côte d'Ivoire as the Independent Electoral Commission reiterates its readiness to conduct transparent and inclusive elections on October 25, 2025. The electoral empire disclosed on Tuesday at the end of the candidacy file submission period by presidential aspirants. Accompanied by hundreds of party supporters and senior government officials, President Alassane Ouattara officially entered the race for a fourth-term bid following the receipt of his nomination form by the REC, President Ibrahim Koubian Koulibaly. Moving a step further in the electoral process, the Commission is expected to soon publish the list of qualified candidates as stipulated by law. Emo Edit completes the story.
By the end of Tuesday, August 26, Côte d'Ivoire edged closer to another crucial and deciding moment in the country's democracy following the expiration of the submission period of candidacy files by presidential aspirants. Ending his long political maneuver, President Alassane Ouattara, accompanied by hundreds of supporters, arrived at the IEC headquarters in Abidjan and registered his name on the candidates list. Ouattara, after an audience with the management of the electoral body, during which he signed an election peace accord, spoke to the press and loyalists from the ruling RHDP party.
I did so in response to the call of my party, the RHDP, and to the call of many Ivorians who want us to continue together on the path of peace, stability, and development that our country has been experiencing for several years. In this regard, I would like to thank the strong mobilization of our compatriots who were keen to be present for this important stage of the electoral process. Beyond an administrative act, my candidacy is therefore in line with the spirit of responsibility and respect for the rule of law.
At least 40 candidates, both new and seasoned politicians, including former President Laurent Gbagbo, have declared their interest in participating in the October 25 vote. Alassane Ouattara is seeking a fourth mandate amid a tense climate. Gbagbo, former Prime Minister Guillaume Soro, and a few others remain ineligible due to court orders. Tijan Cham, president of the PDCI party, cleared of nationality status over the weekend, was able to present his candidacy. The election body is expected to publish the list of qualified candidates soon. Citizens, political analysts and observers in Côte d'Ivoire are calling for peace to avoid recurrence of the 2010-2011 election violence.
Emo Edit filed that report. In Mali, the political party dissolution case has taken a new turn. Following the decision of the High Court of Commune 1 to suspend the measure, the case is now before the Constitutional Court. This decisive step raises both hopes and questions for the dissolved parties. Sankole Janko tells us more in this report.
The court made the pronouncement on Monday, flashing a light of chance and hope for the defense lawyers who believe they have reached an important milestone. However, these legal proceedings are far from over, as all eyes are now on the Constitutional Court. The highest judicial organ of the Malian society must rule on the legality and compliance of the political party's dissolution. According to legal expert Mahamadou Konate, the Supreme Court's ruling could be crucial in this case. For his part, political analyst Usman Dao emphasizes that the decision taken at first instance gives hope to the dissolved political parties. This decision, he believes, could lead to the restoration of the rule of law in the country. For Malians at home and abroad, they hope for the Constitutional Court's verdict to restore the once vibrant multi-party system in the country. It's worth noting that the transitional government on May 12, 2025, announced a decree dissolving all political parties and groups, citing recommendations from a recently held national conference to reconfigure the system.
A report by WADR's Bamako correspondent Aliou Chiam and presented by Sankule Janko. Guinea-Bissau's Prime Minister Brahima Kamara is currently receiving medical treatment in Dakar, Senegal, after collapsing shortly following his swearing in as a member of the Council of State. Kamara was medically evacuated to Dakar on Monday evening on a special military flight. After suffering a sudden illness, he was initially taken to the main military hospital in Bissau, where he received first aid. Authorities in Bissau have not disclosed the expected duration of his medical stay in Dakar. They cited only the need to ensure the prevention of his full physical condition and the continuity of the high-level functions he performs. The appointed Prime Minister on August 7 to succeed Rue Doute Di Barros Kamara, the coordinator of the opposition party Mandem G15, officially took office the following day. His appointment comes just months ahead of the presidential election scheduled for November, in which President Umaru Sissoco Embalo is expected to run for a re-election. Elsewhere in Liberia, power tussle between the executive and legislative arms of government has been described as a major challenge in the country's governance framework and political ecosystem. Representative Sumo Mobile of Monserrado County District 3 warns that oversight, a core function of the legislature, has been sidelined within the Liberian parliament, hindering accountability and democratic checks and balances. Moba argues that such dynamics threatens foundational democratic principles, particularly the system of checks and balances, vital for responsible governance. WADR's Monrovia correspondent Abraham Parker reports.
The member of the House of Representatives told to WADR after a committee meeting on Tuesday that the executive influence or control over the legislature has over the years weakened the parliament's ability to examine governmental actions and respond to national developments. Smo Moba stated that efforts to hold the executive branch to account are frequently met with resistance, sometimes framed as a personal affront, contributing to an impasse on the floor of the lower chamber. Moluba, however, believes that the legislature can regain its balance and independence if fellow members avoid compromising actions and prioritize national interest.
Oversight has been the major issue. Our oversight function has been like play under the carpet. I think when we are discussing democracy, it should form part of the process. The executive branch control the legislature. So when there are ills, I think there should be no supporting negotiation because we are a separate branch that should be able to check it, the executive branch.
Moluba urges the current leadership of the Liberian House of Representatives to implement reforms aimed at restoring transparency and accountability.
To have a unique house that will create the fulcrum for check and balance is to make sure we go through what we call the audit, right? If you can audit the executive branch, we need to do similar thing with the House or legislature.
Currently on recess, Liberians anticipate the return of a unified legislature shaken by months of impasse trickled by the leadership crisis between the ruling Unity Party and the opposition CDC. For Newslink on WADR, Abraham Parker, Monrovia.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Back here in Senegal, the Intergovernmental Action Group Against Money Laundering in West Africa, GIABA, has officially launched the second round of mutual evaluation of its member states. In its 2024 annual report launched on Tuesday in Dakar, Senegal, the outcome of the evaluation initiated in 2016 shows improvements in anti-money laundering and counter-terrorism financing compliance across the sub-region. The two-day event, which ends today, brings together GIABA country correspondents, ECOWAS ambassadors, development partners, and media practitioners. As Augustine Colley reports, participants are engaging in discussions on the report findings to propose additional measures to combat financial crimes in the region.
The GIABA 2024 annual report reveals notable strides in the fight against money laundering and terrorist financing across West Africa. Among the major milestones is the removal of some member countries from the grey list after meeting international anti-money laundering and counter-terrorist financing standards. Edwin Harris is the Director General of GIABA.
In 2021, Ghana exited the grey list. And then last year, Senegal also left the grey list. And this year, in June, Mali left the grey list. So we have 3 countries on the grey list. Interestingly, in August, we have 2 on-site verification. That was the Federal Republic of Nigeria and Burkina Faso.
The grey list refers to countries on increased monitoring by GIABA and the Global Financial Action Task Force due to deficiencies in their anti-money laundering and counter-terrorist financing standards. Despite the commendable progress, ECOWAS Gender Development Center underscores the importance of inclusive approaches. It stresses that women's groups must be considered essential partners in the regional fight against financial crimes. Monkat Sandra Ulit is director of ECOWAS Gender Development Center.
Women and vulnerable groups often bear the heaviest burden of insecurity and poverty that illicit financial flows perpetuate. Empowering women and youth, strengthening families, and ensuring equal opportunities will make our societies more resilient to the destabilizing forces that GIABA confronts daily.
However, a crucial challenge remains the funding of GIABA's upcoming mutual evaluation for non-ECOWAS member states. These countries, particularly those within the AES bloc, are ineligible for ECOWAS financial support, leaving a funding gap that could hinder comprehensive regional assessments.
Augustine Colley filed that report. In the Gambia, 21 protesters, including several women, have regained their freedom following extended negotiations with authorities on Tuesday. The group was arrested by police on Monday while on their way to the National Assembly to engage with officials. While they insist that no offense was committed, the police asserted that the youth were detained for common nuisance and obstruction of officers transporting remanded protesters linked to last week's unlawful assembly at the Pura headquarters in Kairaba Avenue. Their convergence was to denounce the recent hike in data subscription. Seibu Kamara, spokesperson for Gambians Against Looted Assets Gala, spoke to fellow protesters after their release.
We will be jailed, we will be locked up, but we will be released, but Gambia will be free. We are going to get into the various cars that are here to go home. We understand that only our wish we are going to walk back to Westfield. But sometimes we must re-strategize, we must re-energize, and we must come back again. But for now, let's be within the confinement of the law. Let's dispatch, go home, Sangulen, we are going to communicate on the next step and what is going to happen. Are we okay?
Yeah, we are people.
So that's Seibu Kamara, the spokesperson for the Gambians Against Looted Assets. Meanwhile, the presidency, in a statement, said President Adama Barrow has since set up a high-level committee to review recent pricing regulations in the telecommunications sector introduced by the Public Utility Regulatory Authority, PURA. You're still listening to Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and around the world on wadr.org. We are also live on Facebook at WADR English Service, as well as YouTube at WADR News. Here is a reminder of our top stories. Côte d'Ivoire's Independent Electoral Commission seals the candidacy registration phase ahead of October 25 elections, and the Gambia police releases 22 protesters as the government investigates recent hike in data subscription. Guinea-Bissau's Prime Minister Brahima Kamara seeks medical treatment in Dakar shortly after his swearing in into office. And the African, still ahead in the news, the African Chief of Defense Staff Summit ends today in Abuja, Nigeria. We do have the press review, guest interview, and sports news. Please stay with us.
Fresh and breaking news all the time. Hear it first as the news breaks, only on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Let me take you to Nigeria, where lecturers under the auspices of the Academic Staff Union of Universities, ASU, staged peaceful protests across public universities on Tuesday, demanding the government fulfill agreements reached since 2009. The demonstration, coordinated by ASU, are the latest in series of moves to press for a better funding and payment of arrears. Still in Nigeria, after 3 days of intense deliberations on regional and continental security threats, the maiden edition of the African Chief of Defense Staff Summit ends today in Abuja, Nigeria. The conference is themed combating contemporary threats to regional peace and security in Africa, the role of strategic defense collaboration. Attended by delegates from 54 African nations, each highlighted unique but common geopolitical dynamics affecting peace and security on the continent, from poor governance to poverty, piracy, organized and transnational crimes. Insurgency continues to affect several areas, particularly in the Sahel, accounting for 51% of global terrorism deaths in 2024 alone. To respond to these threats, the president of ECOWAS Commission, Dr. Omar Toure, says the organization is scaling up counter-terrorism efforts. He was represented by the ECOWAS Commissioner for Political Affairs, Peace and Security, Ambassador Abdel Fattah Musa.
ECOWAS is acutely aware of the threat of renewed geostrategic and geopolitical processes unfolding in West Africa and beyond that threaten renewed proxy wars akin to the Cold War era, due in part to the acute insecurity facing the continent, and it is determined to avert this scenario. A first step in this direction is our efforts to scale up counter-terrorism efforts. The organization is in the process of activating a 260,000 rapid deployment counter-terrorism brigade and to provide logistic and financial support to frontline states facing terrorism. While ECOWAS remains firmly committed to raising its 5,000-man brigade under the auspices of the African Peace and Security Architecture, the activation of this rapid deployment force has become a necessity given the asymmetric security dynamics in the region.
And that ECOWAS Commissioner for Political Affairs, Peace and Stability, Ambassador Abdel Fattah Musa, speaking on behalf of the ECOWAS Commission, Dr. Omar Toure, at the ongoing Chief of Defense Staff Summit in Abuja.
This is the newspaper review. Stay abreast and find out what the top stories are in your country.
This is the newspaper review.
The newspaper review.
Let's join Sankule Janko for the press review for major headlines in the Gambia.
Let's begin the newspaper review with the Fourier newspaper. And the front page stories on the Fourier newspaper reads as follows. The lead story actually says UTG Faculty Staff Association threatens strike over $25 million vehicle purchase. This other one reads, Ministry of Justice Archives in bad conditions, says Registrar of Companies. Gambia, South Korea launched $5.6 million K-Rise Belt project. Commissioner Chair asserts the financial manual is legally binding as KMC Mayo challenges its authority. Let's move on to the other newspapers, because today's newspapers stories are really dominated by issues related to the recent protest by young people in the Gambia. Let's head to the Point newspaper, and the lead story on the Point newspaper reads, Barrow sets committee to review regulations in telecom sector. That's the lead story with the photo of President Adama Barrow. Mayor Bensouda claims unravel as document surface. Another story, new Turkey's ferry set to revolutionize Gambia's water transport. Gambian American nabbed with cannabis suitcase at airport. Let's take a look at the Standard newspaper. And the Standard newspaper's lead story reads, NHRC asks government to withdraw charges against protesters amend Public Order Act. With a huge photo of Emmanuel D. Juve, the chairman of the National Human Rights Commission of the Gambia. And then the final story reads, State House gets Deputy Director of Press. These are the major stories making headlines on Gambian Daily.
Thank you very much, Sankole Janko, for the press review from the
politics, analysis on major news, social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
This segment of Newslink takes us back to Nigeria, where the maiden edition of the African Chiefs of Defense Staff Summit ends today in Abuja. The conference is themed Combating Contemporary Threats to Regional Peace and Security in Africa, the role of strategic defense collaboration. From poor governance to poverty, piracy, organized and transnational crimes, insurgency continues to affect several areas, particularly in the Sahel, accounting for 51% of global terrorism deaths in 2024 alone. Our guest is Dr. Maji Peters, a Nigerian security expert who weighs in on the matter.
The problem I have is not the summit, it's not the conference, it's not the conversation, it's the commitment. Many a times people come to these tables because you feel they don't want their seat to be empty. People come to these tables and they say those things you want to hear them say. But most of the times, when the deliberations, when there are ratifications needed, when agreements are reached, the commitment is not there. Nations are not proactive in issues around security. Rather, they are reactive. They wait for something to happen before they bounce off. So this conversation is long overdue. And I just hope that they will have a standing force, and this is going to be a continuous thing, because right now the Sahel, Africa generally, is becoming a very strong focus for organized terrorist groups. And one, the governance system permits. Two, the push and pull factors are very viable here and appealing. Three, the porousness of the borders makes it easier for them to hibernate in places that threaten interference because of jurisdiction.
You mentioned the Sahel, a region that is currently battling escalating trend of terrorism. How do you think ECOWAS can achieve such recommendations that will come out of this regional security discussions when its neighbors, the Central Sahel, is battling escalating trend of terrorism?
You see, the issue about safety is one for all and all for one. And even nations who prior don't even establish strong diplomatic ties, when there is a threat that affects, that impacts, that threatens their sovereignty, they come together. Why do you have international mediation? Because we know that the escalation of this conflict might threaten sovereignty or can lead to humanitarian disaster. So irrespective of who is on the table, when the agreement is with and it is beneficial, everybody will join. And even for nations that are not represented, like you could tell, Nigeria are having military conversations with Niger outside of ECOWAS because of neighbors. Burkina Faso, Mali, the last time their military chiefs came for Burkina Faso came on a tour in Nigeria to engage with their counterparts here. So I think irrespective of what it is, if the agreements are right, the commitments are solicited, and most importantly, the fundings are available, I think most nations will get on board, because nobody that does not suffer the ill implications and effect and impact of actions of terror groups.
This Chief of Defense Staff Summit is just one of many summits or conferences that ECOWAS has held in an attempt to address terrorism within the region. Yet, the region continues to face escalating strength of terrorism. Are there hopes, despite these many meetings, for a region free of terrorism?
I think there is hope that the thing is going to go to its lowest ebb if efforts have been put together. They've had a lot of conversations, and for every other summit that they have, they try to look at the gaps that happened in the one prior. And I think we should not give up on it. I dare hope that we're going to have zero terrorism. That's a very far-fetched dream. I dare hope that terrorism is going to be defeated. Yes, that's very possible, and it can work. I dare hope that we're going to have a very, very reduced to the barest minimal of acts of terrorism and the presence of terror groups. Yes, that's a possibility if the commitments are absolute and the dedication towards achieving that is sincere. So I think we're on the right trajectory, especially now that they are putting funding forward. Formally, they don't actually discuss budgeting and funding and nations' commitment. So the Friday meeting is a record breaker, and we just hope that comes out very successfully. Everybody is getting fed up. The only people who key into it, because naturally are those who benefit from it. They don't see anything wrong with the system that you profit from. So I think it's high time for the whole nation to rise together and ensure that they make the place unbearable for the terrorist groups.
Our guest is Dr. Mahdi Peters, a Nigerian security expert who weighed in on the matter. And in sports this afternoon, Morocco reached the finals of the Total Energy African Nations Championship CHAN 2024 after overcoming holders Senegal 5-3 on penalties following a tense 1-1 draw after extra time at the Nelson Mandela National Stadium in Kampala on Tuesday night. The Atlas Lions, winners in 2018 and 2020, will now face Madagascar on Sunday's finals in Nairobi after the island nation beat Sudan for the first encounter of the semi-finals. Morocco will now face a surprise package Madagascar in Sunday's finals at Nairobi Moa Sports Center, Kasarani, while Senegal must regroup for the third place playoff against Sudan. For Morocco, it will be the chance to reclaim continental dominance and join the record books with a third CHAN title. But for Senegal, their dream of defending their crown may have ended, but their youthful side left Kampala with dignity, intact and optimism for the future. And that ends sports this afternoon. And with that, we've come to the end of this edition of Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and around the world on wadr.org. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Mustafa Sek and Ismail Kamara for the technical assistance. Do interact with us via our social media platforms, X formerly Twitter, Instagram at WADR English, and on Facebook at WADR English Service. I am Christopher Aticho. Coming up shortly, at the bottom of the hour is our gender program 50-50 with Na Dede Tete. Have a good afternoon and enjoy the rest of our broadcasts.
And many thanks to you for listening to Newslink via Hot 104.3 FM, Newmi FM 94.0,
Hilltop Radio 104.7 FM,
and Veritas Radio 102.9 in Banjul, the Gambia. We also appreciate our listeners in Liberia via Alternative Youth Radio 98.9 FM, Lofa County,
Radio Kagama 94.5 FM, Nibe County, DCN Radio 91.3 FM, Riverside County, Wakat FM Radio, Banga, Liberia, Radio Gulf FM 91.3 Sierra Leone.
For you listening via Radio Pad 95.1 Damango, Savannah region, and on Royals FM 104.7 Wenchi, Ghana, we say a big thank you. Remember, West Africa Democracy Radio is all about you, your views, and your opinions.